Okay, let's go ahead and add that hat in. So we're going to need a head. Let's bring back our base mesh there, and we could just about squeeze in at the top there, but let's give ourselves a little bit more room by selecting everything we've got, and we'll just move it down a little bit so we've got plenty of room there to work with. Now, let's go ahead and add here. We will do hat. Very aptly named. Okay, now the hat, there's nothing else on her head, so you could cast it as a first layer, but I'm going to go ahead and use the orange to designate a secondary layer. So, what hat am I going to use? Let's bring back our mood board. We've got quite a few selections, but again, we're not limited to this one. The two that we've generally got in this kind of mood board here is we've got a cowboy hat sported by Ash, and we've got this kind of naval officer hat, which is sported by Lady Maria. And if we're combining both, ideally we'd combine both hats, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not that creative. I would not know what that looked like. I'm asking my brain, what does that look like? And it's just shaking its head at me. So I've got no idea what that looks like. But how about this? Let's not go for Ash's hat or Lady Maria's hat. Let's go for someone completely different's hat. How about this one? The Red Mage's Musketeer hat. Okay, now it's no little secret that the Final Fantasy XIV Red Mages are essentially musketeers. So let's go ahead and have a look at some musketeer hats. Okay, I've done a little bit of the googling, and I've found a wonderful image of a musketeer hat which I think would suit quite well. Let me just go ahead and pop that in here. Yes, there we go. I have no idea who this person is, but he's a rather dashing gentleman. But you can see here that we've got this kind of musketeer hat. Now it kind of looks a little bit half Stetson-like with this flip up here, and it's not actually pinned to anything, it's just naturally warped. Okay, so I'm going to put that there to my side. So yes, I'm kind of cheating. I'm not using the mood board. Now, if you're like me and you're looking at that and you're kind of thinking, well, I'm still drawing a blank on how I could draw that, I found the perfect picture whilst I was searching through things. I can't figure out what that looks like because the photographic's so realistic. But how about this? Yeah, little Lego man. Okay, so the Lego man is going to help us kind of simplify the shape of the musketeer hat. So what is that shape in particular I'm talking about? Well, it's this kind of wave up like that. It's this kind of curvature. Now, obviously, this hat is that kind of curvature, you can see. Okay, but this hat is a little bit more kind of up like that. So it's almost kind of flat and then flicks up and then wraps back around again. And then we've got this kind of layer there. So it's a very kind of tricky hat. It's almost an optical illusion to kind of construct and draw. I'm just actually drawing it off the character's head unintentionally. I didn't mean to do that, but I'm just kind of showing you what I mean here. But actually, I might just go ahead and pop this on her head now and see what that looks like. Okay, but you can see just kind of roughly drawn in there. It's very, very what I'd call a peculiar shape, but it's the peculiarity of it, I believe, that makes it look quite unique. And it's a nice halfway house between what Lady Maria has and what Ash wears. And that's the two characters that I'm essentially looking to kind of combine. Okay, so what does that look like if I just plop that on her head now? Well, not very much because she's blonde hair, so it's quite difficult to see the effect of that. But if we colour it in, we should be able to see what kind of result we're going to get. Now, what shade of grey should I colour this in with? Provided I can spell coloured first. Let's go for it. That's a secondary layer, and a lot of our secondary layers are kind of this dark grey. So we'll keep with the theme, and we'll zoom in, and we'll just start to paint this kind of hat in. So there we go. Start over there, and you might think, well, isn't that hat a little bit too big? Yes, it is, and that's deliberate because I feel like if you look at a lot of kind of gothic art and costumes, sometimes there is a real gothic element for things being very, very big. For example, the easiest thing to think about is think about a dark gothic looking church. Have you ever noticed how the actual windows in that church are massive? Like, we're talking obscenely large. The doors are extremely tall and heavy and particularly wrought with iron and whatnot. So, you know, there is a real sense of gothicness if you just make things slightly bigger than they ought to be. And there we go. I think I'm actually quite surprised that came together so well. Let's make it a little bit lower. Yeah, perhaps just something a little bit lower like that would be nice. I might even want to make it a bit bigger. I don't know, although I'm just being very cautious about how big that is. But once again, the final size will probably be determined in 3D and ZBrush, and I imagine that the size of her hat will be something that I personally will be tweaking all the way up until before we rig it, honestly. Okay, so just throwing that out there as a bit of a disclaimer. So let's go ahead and just kind of finish. Just got a bit of gap there between her hair and the hat, so just fill that in just for good measure, and possibly a little bit down here as well, just to make sure that the hat is sat on her head, not just floating on it. Okay, there we go. I don't know about the feather. It could be quite nice, but I'm going to hold off on it for now, okay? Because, let's say bye to the little Lego man. Thank you, Lego man, you were great help. Okay, alright, so we've got a hat in there now, perfect. Actually, there's one, okay, that's fine. Okay, no, so I just saw this gap there and I was thinking that's kind of ruining the overall silhouette of it. So let's address that. If you see something of the base mesh kind of ruining the silhouette, I mean, you could always duplicate it in case you don't want to change your base mesh too much. But right now, this kind of little black garment here is harming the silhouette, so I'm just going to color that away, and then the shorts there as well. So I can still have the effect of her head on top and the rest of it, but obviously not have anything else kind of affect the drawing too much. And get rid of that shadow too. In fact, you probably could actually just color over the whole thing and just leave her head. That's another thing you could do. I don't know why I just didn't do that in the first place, because obviously we've finished using that now. And then the shirt color underneath obviously is still protruding out a little bit, so let's just erase that. There we go. That's nice now. So we've got that kind of curvature there. Perfect. Alright, fabulous. Now, let's get on to the coat. What are we going to do with the coat? I propose this. So, this Assassin's Creed coat is wonderful. I do like the look of it. It looks great. It's menacing. It's dark. It's gothic. It checks almost all the right boxes, but I don't think we can include it. As sad as it is to say, I don't think we can include it, because if she's got a hat already, adding this kind of gown and element here almost suggests a very, very rogue-like nature. And remember that one of my themes was this kind of redeemed vigilante character. So I'm probably going to have to give her a bit more of a refined, respectable sort of cloak. And I'm going to look at this one here, this kind of sleeveless kind of coat, so her arms can stick out, so if she's using her sword it's no problem, she can still be garbed in this kind of cloak here, but also use her arms freely. But I'm going to kind of spice it up a little bit and make it look a little bit more unique than just a kind of drab grey. Okay, but I'm just going to copy that basically onto the character here. In fact, the picture is almost, you could just probably just do that by copying and pasting it, but let's try and draw it anyhow. Okay, so let's go to the topmost layer here. We'll create a new layer and we'll call this the coat. Now we don't actually have a color for fourth tier, but I suppose we can invent one. Let's use a kind of red, maybe a darker red, just so it doesn't burn our irises out. And let's go ahead and we'll use that instead. So get it nice and small, and where do we start? I'm going to start up here around the neck. And again, don't worry about the collar, because the collar will just kind of pretend it's not there. So we'll just kind of wrap this around somewhat there. So it's kind of almost pinned here, and then we can see that it shoots down to roughly somewhere around there, and just seems to hang loose from the shoulder here. Okay, so that seems to be all one piece. It's kind of tucked around there and folds in on itself, and then comes here like that. So it's almost just hanging by its own separate piece. And then we can continue this part here, which is almost like a kind of hood that goes up there, tucks there, and then it kind of folds in down on itself here, basically something like that. Okay, right, that's that part done. And then of course it's sleeveless, so this part here just goes out to the very extremities of the shoulder there, wraps over, but also just finishes down here somewhat. Now, how am I going to construct this? I have no idea. Okay, but let's just go ahead and draw it in anyway, and we'll worry about it later. Now here's the challenging part. It's got to have to come across all the way down here to roughly this part on the knee. So let's just keep going all the way down. There we go. Okay, and that's that part that will stop there. Come back up here and we'll join that down there in a triangle. And then from here, we want to almost follow that kind of curvature and just really push out the cloak now. Push it all the way out so that it's kind of nice and fancy, and then do a kind of little cloak wrap here. And we want to kind of bring it so it wraps back up around there, something like that. Okay, it's okay to be exaggerative about it. It's fine, don't worry. And then do the back there. The back actually maybe will make it a little bit higher. Maybe not so low, so maybe something like that. I don't know, that could be interesting. Maybe it's a bit too high, maybe something like that. We'll see. Okay, we can always change that later. And then from here, around the leg part here, we're going to have this part that basically comes down and sort of, what can we say, just kind of like that, essentially. And we're going to have a nice sharp pointy edge because you do still want the garment to be somewhat gothic. So let's bring it back up. And we'll just kind of tuck it, get the breast line in, and we'll tuck it back in there like that. So what the heck have we drawn? Well, it's very, very messy at the moment. So let's tidy it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to draw that up. And maybe just have a bit of part there, another element of it. Something like that. Okay. Have that fold in the back. It's fine. And something down there. And then we need the other part that goes on the bottom. It's very hard to draw a cloak because it's such straight lines for such a long time going all the way up. So it's very hard to kind of keep a consistent edge. Okay, so the idea I kind of want to convey is that everything is quite tightly wrapped around the chest, but flares out around the waist area. So let's just play with that idea a little bit more. We'll kind of keep it tightly wrapped there, but then from this point onwards, it kind of flares out quite a bit. So the same thing there, and at this point, it's tightly wrapped around the chest. Something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and get some color to it. And you know, my color is so inventive. I'm going to use a light gray for once. There you go. Very, very inventive. Oh, that's a bit too light though. Okay, let's go a little bit darker. And again, because we're in a 2D application and on computer and whatnot, it's very easy to just change this color, this kind of slate color that we're using now, for something else entirely. So don't try to get too hung up on me just using grays all the time. So there we go. So the other thing I am looking out for is, does this coat help keep her silhouette? Obviously it's going to change it, but can we still tell it's the same kind of character under the kind of coat? And does it still make her, does she still look feminine? Because actually that's quite an important part of his character. I don't just want to kind of dress a girl up in a man's kind of piece of clothing, although that does look nice. I do have to say that does work in of itself, but that for me is not really the intention here. It's kind of half the intention, but at the same time also not the intention. So let's just kind of keep going anyhow. We'll see how we do. Okay, so that's that part there, and then let's go on the bottom here, just under the trousers, and you've guessed it, we're going to use a darker shade to indicate the back of the coat there. There we go. Okay, so you can kind of see that the grey I chose is not fantastic. That's not a great looking grey, that's for sure. But it gives us the idea as to how much of her costume is wrapped up and hidden away, and you can see that the arm's still sticking out there as well. Now I am a fan of the belt system that is also going on in here, so let's add that in. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll bring it back. These kind of belts that's going on there, which seems to be the primary way this garment's fastened together. Okay, because we've got belts on our character already, so let's keep that kind of theme going. So we'll kind of have one that maybe kind of comes across here, just above the waist, and I'm using a different red, but hey, doesn't matter. Quite a big belt buckle on there. Okay, and then we've got slightly smaller ones in threes here, 1, 2, 3, and let's just kind of draw them in. And we'll see how they work. Okay, let's just draw in a few kind of folds just to kind of keep the detail in. Just see how that looks overall. And then obviously this is tightly stretched. And this is bound here, so we can kind of have some crease marks there. This garment has been tightly fastened around her torso. And then as it goes towards the leg, it just kind of fans out a little bit more. Very nice and loose. It might even have a bit of stitching that goes all the way up. And this side here starts to fan out and get looser as it gets towards the bottom. Something like that. Okay. Now, well, actually, one last thing. We should probably colour in the belts a different colour. So let's go ahead and we'll do that very quickly before we move on. And we're very much getting to the end of this concept art piece here. I'm sorry it's taken so long, but I do just kind of want to share like 10-penny thoughts with you in terms of how to get a character concept working. Okay, I've kind of gone over it a bit, so let's tidy that up. Okay, oops, I've made another mistake. There we go. Okay, something like that. Okay. So, we haven't done other things like what do her holsters look like, what does her sword look like, and everything like that. And I think what we'll probably do is we'll probably take a break from that for now, and we'll probably go ahead with the character design as it is, actually start getting into something like ZBrush. But we might just have to kind of brainstorm a couple of ideas on a separate piece of paper as to what the sword sheath might look like, what the gun holster might look like. I'm quite hesitant to rush that part. We shouldn't rush it, so maybe we'll spend just one more video, guys, I'm sorry, on doing that. So, but before we do that, it's an important step we must do. We've got all these different colors everywhere, and it is actually going to affect how we finally perceive the character. So what we've got to do, and this is the fun part, we're just basically going to blacken everything here. Now, the program I use is kind of has a funny way of doing this. It likes to blacken all the layers, but don't be alarmed. It's just blackening the kind of darkening the one layer there, and do the same for all the drawn layers, just so that we can actually see without the multi kind of colored stuff. Can we do it all in one go? Yeah, looks like we can. Let's do it. The boots load up. Yeah, okay, and let's go to adjustment. Hue saturation, and we'll just bring that to grayscale. Of course it didn't do it for all the layers. I knew that was too good to be true. So we're going to have to do it all. We could merge all the layers and do that, but I do want to keep the layers separate just in case I decide to go back and change something. If it's all the one layer, that's going to be a lot of erasing and it's going to be inconvenient, so I'm just going to keep them on the same layer for now. As the gloves turn to go black. There we go. And you can see now that actually our design is coming back. It's not being hurt anymore by the obscenely bright color lines. And for the shirt here, we're probably going to actually have to use a color other than black. We're going to use a slightly kind of darker grey, 70% grey, just so we can kind of see some of that detail there. We'll probably have to go... Actually, could we go black? Is it completely black? We could go black. That's fine. That's okay. That's okay. So we'll go black. It's not quite a black, even though it looks pretty dark. And then we'll do the same. Keep going. I know this is very repetitious. I'm sorry. I just became aware of the keyboard shortcut, so I'll use that now. There we go. Okay, we still got this little green guy sat around here. What's that about? Yeah, this is the thing here. So you see that's an unfortunate thing. So all I'm gonna have to be able to do there is just kind of shift that to grayscale, And have a look at that. That's actually turned out not so bad. Right, so what can we do now? We take the coat off and we can see what she looks like underneath, and yeah, the greys are too similar. Too similar. I will completely forfeit that point to you for sure. But of course we can now come in, and once the general design is done, now we can actually come in and change out some of the colors and whatever we'd like to do there. But I think overall, guys, I'm quite happy with that concept art. It's always quite nerve-wracking to do concept art because you could spend ages on it. I'm glad it didn't take too long to come up with this design. And of course there will be absolutely elements going forward that will change. That is for sure guaranteed. But for the most part, I'm quite happy to make a start on the garment of the character. Absolutely, so that's something that I'm actually quite surprised with. You can probably hear the genuine surprise in my voice and thinking, wow, that actually didn't turn out so bad. And you can see that there is, I'll make a case a little bit here. There is a case for the tone of the character to be maneural, in say so just black, greys, and whites. That's up to you. If you want to do that, you can, because every time you add in a little dash of color, it gets all the more exaggerated, like the kind of belts here. This was seen like a happy little accident. I don't recall making that a brownish black or brownish grey, but it is a brownish grey, and you know what? I like that colour. I might elect to use that colour for the rest of the belts. In fact, I'm excited about it. Let's just go ahead and see what happens if we do it that way. Let's use a fill bucket. And where's our belts? There we are. Yeah, we could do that. So actually, probably the best way to do it is to... And this is the annoying thing about this thing here. It likes to change the whole kind of board. You see, it's kind of making everything that color. I think layer adjustment. We're going to have to go to recolor. Yes, that's it. Oh, we don't want a red. Bring it down a bit. Bring it down. It's kind of like a reddish kind of brown, wasn't it? So maybe something a little bit more... Yeah, something a little bit like that. And nothing happened. Of course it didn't. Of course not. Okay, anyway, what I think I'll do now, guys, is I will spend a bit of time outside of the videos playing with the colors, experimenting with them, and I'll bring them all back to you to present, and then we'll pick one and we'll kind of go through, the designs and ideas as to why, which colors work best. Okay, but I'll go ahead and do that between the videos, and I'll see you in the next one where we actually select the color scheme going forward.